Hey, this is Gerd Handel, and welcome to the Inner Light Project. This show is for anyone who's wanting to lead a happier, healthier, and enlightened life. Create more self-love, inject more joy and abundance into their daily life. Join me for inspiring interviews and spiritual topics so you can shine your inner light. Hello and welcome to a special episode of the Inner Light Project. My name is Gerd Handel and today I have a stunning guest with me who's helping people to heal their health and well-being. Dane is a health coach and 21st century medicine woman who combines ancient wisdom with her American lineage with holistic health and nutrition. She has co-authored books with Louise Hay and hosts the Loving Yourself to Great Health on Hay House radio show. She believes we can all heal from the inside out. Heather, it's an absolute pleasure having you on the show again, and thank you for joining us.
Hi, Gert. I'm so happy to be back.
Oh, bless you. I just love talking to you and just some of the conversations that we have. And last time we spoke about your story, how you transformed your life. We've talked about the bone broth secret, indigenous and epigenetic healing, and it's just been so interesting learning about lots of things from yourself. And this time I just would love to talk to you about the power of shining our light and listening to that voice of our ancestors. So my first question is, when did you first start hearing your ancestors' voices?
I think I was probably tuned in when I was young, but didn't realize it. I had a lot of dreams, and I had a lot of dreams that came true. And I think if many of us think back to our childhood, we were much more open to the magic and the mystery of life.
Yeah.
And I found myself reveling in my dreams. I would actually, as a child, wake up and really lie there in that moment between sleep and waking and really go over the dreams that I was having. And then if a week later the dream came true, I would be surprised and really just embracing the magic of life. And at some point that went away. At some point, and I think, over the years, especially as we get caught up in the stress of life, but physiologically what starts to happen is as we get stressed and we start dumping minerals and B vitamins, we stop dreaming. Our dreams actually go away. And I think it's kind of interesting that the more we get into the grind of life, the more all of the nutrients that we need to keep us in a space of dreaming start to go away. And then some of us lose our dreams, and that happened to me. I stopped dreaming. I stopped dreaming to the extent that I was, and I stopped paying attention to my dreams when I woke up in the morning. And at some point, I began asking myself, why am I not paying attention to my dreams, and why am I not dreaming anymore? And I began to work on my health and work on the nutrients that start to go away. Like one of the vitamins that tends to be deficient if you're not dreaming is vitamin B6. And B6 is also helpful for energy and moods and, just a sense of feeling grounded. It's good for nerves and things like that. And so I started to pay attention to B6 in my diet as well as in my supplements. And my dreams started to come back again. And I began to pay attention to them a little bit more. And I really wanted to sink back into that feeling, that childhood feeling that I used to have where I would love my dreams. So I started to pay attention again. And about 3 years ago, as my dreams were coming back in a more vivid way, and I was remembering them when I woke up, I was aware of the fact that my great-grandmother was coming to me in my dreams. And my great-grandmother on my father's side, which is my Haudenosaunee or Iroquois side of the family, she was an activist and a leader and also a seer. I didn't know that she had psychic qualities until I sat with my cousins and we began sharing stories about her. And I started to realize all of the ways in which she was, very certain of things like what gender a baby was going to be or whether someone was pregnant or not pregnant and many other things. She just had this quality of sight and vision. And it was amazing to learn that and learn sort of the threads of where that was running through our family. And so she was coming to me in my dreams, and she was performing ceremony with me.
Wow.
And I didn't know what the ceremonies were, because while I grew up understanding about my culture and really identifying with my culture as a Native American woman, I did not grow up in the culture. So I didn't grow up going to ceremony and doing all of the traditions that my cousins had grown up doing. And so I didn't understand what was going on. And I just watched and paid attention and felt the magic of what was happening in my dreams. And in my dreams, she would bring me in deep into the forest, and she would have me lie down on the ground. And around me were all I could understand was that they were ancestors and guides around me, and that they were facing outwards in this circle around me. And I had the sense that they were there to protect us in this ceremony. And she was basically doing sage ceremonies and other medicine ceremonies. And the more I would ask to be shown exactly what she was doing, the more I would be shown that. I would see the herbs that she was using, or the medicines that she was using, and I would get up and I would look into them, and I would ask my family, and I would look them up in medical botany books, in Iroquois medical botany books and things like that, and I would learn kind of what was going on, and I would realize that there was actually a logic. The things she was showing me in my dreams were actually things that were done in our culture. So it was really interesting to me to realize that our dreams are more powerful than we think. And here I am now, an adult, well past the childhood mysticism, but almost reconnecting to that mysticism and the magic that I could be having a dream about something that was actually real in our traditions. And at this point, I had studied genetics and epigenetics, and so I understood that there was something outside of our DNA that helped us heal, and that as I dove into the science, our dreams, which were very important in Native American cultures and other cultures like the Buddhist culture, dreams are also very important, and people pay attention to them. And so I began to, in the science, find why story, ritual, ceremony, dreams, why food and thoughts and beliefs, why these things actually do change our DNA. And we don't get to see these studies very often. It's not like somebody's advertising them. Like, they advertise the drug studies all the time, but they're not advertising to us the studies that we can do at home ourselves, like paying attention to our dreams and sharing our stories and diving into our ancestral lineage. We know today from epigenetics that emotions, behaviors, and even things like ritual reconnect us to those parts of our DNA that remember that those things we had many more thousands of years in humanity where those things were what we did to heal than we have today. And from a Native American perspective, when medicine people would choose medicines for people, they didn't just hand the medicine to someone and say, "See you later." They would bring the medicine to someone, and there would be ceremony, ritual, singing, chanting, prayer. There would be community. There would be other aspects of healing that went with that medicine. Because in Native American medicine, they understood the placebo effect before science did double-blind studies about the placebo effect. They understood that if our mind was embracing the fact that this was going to work, and our community was there to support that belief, that people would have an exponential level of healing. And so those things were all used in understanding that there was a mind-body experience to healing.
It's interesting you were talking about childhood dreams, because you just took me back. My niece, when she was really young, wow, she's very psychic. She must have been about 6 years old, and she turned around to her mum's sister and she was pregnant at the time. She said, "You're having a girl, but you're not having a baby." And she just looked at her like, "What are you talking about?" And unfortunately, she had a miscarriage. And then the next time when she was pregnant, she said, "You're having a girl." And she was right.
Wow.
Yeah. We used to be great. So shocked about it. But it just shows how powerful when we're kids, like the innocence and the trust in our intuition and listening to the voices from within, that we are shining our light. It's like you said, later on when we stop allowing ourselves to dream, that kind of disappears.
Right.
And another thing that just was really interesting, what you were just saying about you were seeing these ceremonies. Myself, I was growing up, I was seeing a lot of spirit animals, but I never really understood why I kept seeing a crocodile or why I kept seeing a snake. um, and when you look into the meaning behind it, it's like, wow, like it's about slowing down, making yourself grounded. It's so powerful.
Yes. Our dreams can show us a lot. And the thing about the dreams is that they're in the unseen. And I think in
Mm.
childhood we have a healthier respect for the unseen because we live a lot in our imaginations
Yeah.
in childhood. We have these imaginary worlds that we love to be in, and people have imaginary friends. And when you're playing, when we play as children, we're oftentimes creating imaginary scenarios and playing. And these are all things that actually are um, promoting health, this healthy sense of
Mm.
play, and this ability to have an imagination and believe in that imagination. These are all things that as adults, if we still had a connection to, it would help us follow our dreams a little bit more, because whenever we have a dream, you want to make something happen in your life, it starts first in the unseen. It hasn't been born yet.
Mm.
It hasn't come to physical reality yet. So we've got to believe somehow in the unseen in order to have the courage to keep moving forward. And our dream world is the unseen world. It's where things are happening that we're still processing. We know this from a science perspective. We're processing in our dreams. We're actually, if we stop processing in our dreams, things can get stuck in our psyche and in our subconscious. And that's where we start to get into trouble. And when we allow things to process in the unseen, a lot of connections can be made and a lot of traumas can be moved through in that space. And in Native American medicine, there's a lot of healthy belief in the unseen, and we believe that if we're operating in the unseen, in this what we think is darkness, but really is no thing, there's actually a lot of connection in the unseen and a lot of opportunities to make things happen in the unseen, or to believe things in the unseen that we can use as a place to start.
Mm.
Because as we use our imagination and we become attuned to what we would like to resolve or what we would like to manifest, it allows us to have our radar up so that when we're in the seen world, we're in the physical world, we can pay attention to those things that we need to take action on.
Yeah.
And it's where intuition starts.
Mm.
And if we operate on our intuition is not woo-woo. Intuition is actually how our brain is putting a lot of puzzle pieces together that don't make sense until they come together.
Mm.
And when Gavin DeBecker did a book called I think it's The Gift of Fear, and he was a person who worked on security for celebrities and a lot of people who needed extra help with security. And he started asking people, did you know something was going to happen before it happened? Like before something terrible happened, before a crime was committed, before something happened. For the people who survived, he would say, did you have a feeling or a sense that it was going to happen? And every single person said yes. And he tells a story about a guy who walked into a convenience store and something just didn't feel right, and he left.
Mm.
And a few minutes later, somebody shot everybody in the convenience store, including the person at the cash register, because what happened to this guy is he walked in and all he was doing was reading signs that there would be no proof to these things until after it happened. But he read a look with the cashier. He read body language. He read the positioning of the things that he saw there, and it didn't feel good to him, so he turned around and left. If he had just said, oh, gee, let's just ignore all of that because this doesn't make any logical sense, he would have been one of the victims in that crime.
Wow.
So he was reading a lot of messages that, make a lot of sense, but don't make sense in that one snap moment when we're following our gut.
Yeah.
And this is the thing, we get taught to dismiss it. And the people who were victims of crimes actually said, I walked into the elevator, I felt wrong right before I walked in, and I dismissed it.
Wow.
So I think it's this idea that if we're trusting these unseen signals and these unseen communications and messages and honoring them, we allow a whole form of communication in the unseen that can help us on our path.
Absolutely. Wow. That's mind blowing. Yeah, it's kind of like my dear, like we spoke a few weeks ago when my uncle passed away. Um I don't know, I can't remember if I actually told you the full story, but I got a message from one of my other uncles saying something had happened to somebody, and I heard the voice of my grandfather, who I never met. He passed away when my mum was really young, and I heard his voice saying, "He's safe now." And I was in the car and I was like, "What? What's that about?" And I knew that somebody had passed away. And then 10 minutes later, I got a phone call from my mum saying that my uncle passed away. It was just, it was mind blowing. Like, if we trust in that intuition that we always know, like, if something's going to happen to somebody,
Right.
like, we're so connected, but we sometimes, like you said, we ignore those signs.
Right.
And it was just like, I've never met my granddad. He passed when my mum was 9. I've only seen a photo of him, so the fact that I heard his voice, that says a lot.
It does say a lot. So he was communicating with you and maybe giving you a little bit of a heads up so that you were prepared, right, for the news, because the news of our loved ones passing is so shocking.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so you already had a seed planted so that the shock could be less, it seems to me, which is quite a gift from the unseen to sort of prepare you in that way. And I just want to express my condolences to you for your loss. And
thank you.
the thing is that in Native American culture and many other cultures around the world, if we go back to the sort of old ways of our ancestors, grief was something that was a community-based experience. When one person had a loss, the community shared the loss. Yeah. And in sharing that loss, the person in grief was not alone. Mm. And there was oftentimes a year of time that was expected to move through and navigate through the process of grief, so that it didn't feel as if grief was something you would feel and have to put away to go back to work right away or to go back to your life right away. And it's not that anyone was wallowing in it. It was just the acknowledgement that this is going to take some time. And so let's find some ceremonies and rituals and ways to navigate through this time. And let's do this together so that you have support. And when we lose that, it's when grief is not fully processed, and I don't feel like we give ourselves the opportunity to fully process grief. We're supposed to just kind of get strong right away. I think that it's one of those things that can stay in the body and become anxiety. Yes. Or become depression, or become an emotion that we don't fully understand. Physical symptoms can crop up. And because we've not allowed it to continue to move, we've not allowed the sacred hoop of life to be walked, where we can go from one end of the circle to the other and find a space where we can honor the fact that it's going to take time.
Yeah. And what was really interesting this time, and it's so true what you're saying, because about 3.5 years ago, my grandma passed away, and I thought I'd dealt with it, and but back then I kind of had a way of just putting on like a front, everything's okay. When it came to grief, I healed a lot of other things, but grief was something that I'd forgotten about. And so when my uncle passed away, it was like reminding me. I heard my grandma's voice, I heard lots of different voices, I heard my dad's mum's voice, and it reminded me that I needed to heal the grieving part of my journey. And I literally wrote a letter to all of them individually. And when I burnt the letters, wow, it was like I was ready to release the old energy, like you said, that's stored in your body. And a weird thing happened that night, that a massive power cut happened in the area, which was like, right, I've got my sign.
Like, there you go. Yeah. So that's the thing. You keep reconnecting, right? And when you reconnect like that, you get these communications. And it helps to navigate that experience. It's the mystery and the magic of it all. And I think that being connected to that mystery and magic allows us to receive. Everybody wants to know how they can trust and listen to their intuition more. And these are the signs that if you weren't paying attention, Gerds, you would be missing out
Yeah.
right, on those communications.
Yeah, it's so true. My dear, I wanted to go back a little bit because you were talking about how your ancestors and like you were hearing these sounds. I guess that was like your ancestors like giving you the whispers to kind of shine your light.
I think so. I mean, it certainly was, for someone who is of mixed ancestry, and I know you can understand this too, where you feel like you don't belong
Yeah.
anywhere. Like I grew up with a lot of people saying, "You're not white. What are you?"
Mm.
And so, I'm not Native American enough, and I'm not white enough, and I'm not whatever I am enough. And so I, having not lived on the reservation, was very disconnected.
Mm.
And what's really interesting is about 6 months into the dreaming, 6 months to a year into the dreaming of my great grandmother, I met for the first time a cousin of mine who was my great grandmother, and her great grandmother were sisters, and they together were the first people to bring land claim cases for our Oneida Nation to the
Mm.
federal claims courts, because all of our land had been taken away. We had millions of acres of land in treaty that was supposed to be our land, and over the years, as the land became very valuable, the federal government just reneged on the treaties and just took the land over and pushed our nation aside until there was no land left. And so my great grandmother and her sister and their family grew up on a neighboring reservation, and you're sort of like borrowing that space. It's
Mm.
not your land. You're borrowing the land of, yes, it was in our Haudenosaunee Confederacy, and so they were sisters and brothers, but they were still, it still was not our land. And so in the 1940s and 50s, when, even before women had much voice and power in the European colonized world of the United States, because Haudenosaunee women actually had a lot of power and were equals to men before that. So they grew
Yeah.
up knowing sort of what that felt like in essence.
Yeah.
And they got together and they took these land claims to the federal government, and they were the beginning of getting land back.
Wow.
And so over the years, as their activism continued, more people got involved in our families, and they've been written about in books. And so they were the first people to get together and do that. And I thought about what would be the heart beating inside a woman in the 1940s and in the 1950s to do this, not just to get to do something active and go to the federal government, but also in a more difficult situation of being a minority or viewed as a minority in their own country, to come and fight for these land claims. And so they were activists, and they really did a lot. And here the two of us got together and met each other for the first time, my cousin Michelle, and as we met each other, it was like we had known each other our entire lives.
Oh.
And we said we were going to do something together. And a little over a year ago, we got together, and my cousin she had a vision of bringing women together across the Haudenosaunee Confederacy.
Oh, wow.
And she started a group, and she asked me to be on the planning committee with her. So I helped her with a group of women create this event for more than 200 Haudenosaunee women, and some Cherokee women actually came as well. And we had a weekend of healing. And, it was one of those things where you almost think it's impossible to make this happen, because we only had 6 months to plan. And yet everything came together like magic. And when my cousin got busy, because she's doing another degree, she's got her law degree in a couple of different areas, and she's getting another degree right now. When she got busy, she handed the reins over to me, and I ran the group. And so it was like, I just felt like when she handed me the reins, I felt like this was something that our great grandmothers would have loved to see us doing. And it just felt like we were doing something on their behalf. And since all of these women got together, I had an opportunity to participate in traditional ceremony and go into the longhouse, which is where we have meetings and ceremonies and come together. And I got to do all of these traditional things that I had not grown up doing. I had grown up with parts and pieces, but never in a full situation where I was learning and taking part in, and where my body was feeling the reminder of these rituals and these ceremonies. And that was when I got back, it was within 3 weeks Louise Hay had died. And so I was going through grief on my own, but yet I had all of these women with me, and they were, even though I'm living in California and they're in upstate New York and Wisconsin and parts of Canada, we all got together on the phone regularly, and we got on the phone shortly after Louise passed, and there were prayers and acknowledgement for the grief that I was experiencing. And there were prayers and acknowledgement for some other people who were experiencing grief from loss. And I just felt like I had not only, I was sort of leaning back into my ancestors, but I was leaning into this group of women who were sharing this grief with me, and for whom I was sharing grief. And it helped me to feel strong. And we were doing ceremonies together. It's a group of women who were honoring one of the women in the Haudenosaunee culture who was working with our peacemaker to create peace among our nations. And so we were meeting to honor and continue ritual and ceremony around the strength of women in bringing peace and healing to communities. And so being a part of those ceremonies and rituals and being a part of that group, I felt gave me an easier path through the grief.
Wow. I have no words again, Heather. Wow. It's so true. You're right. When we help one another, we rise together as well. And it's so interesting, actually. I never really thought about it. Like, even within like ethnic communities, when somebody passes away, everybody comes together.
Yes.
I never really understood that now until you've just explained it, that why we have that, where everyone comes to the house, and then why is it when the ceremony is happening, everybody's kind of around in a circle. It's because we're healing together.
Yes.
And we're empowering each other.
And circles are important. I think we see circles everywhere in nature. We see circles in our, DNA is just a series of circles in a double helix, and our bones are round and our cells are round, and we have all these circles everywhere. And circles remind us that we come and go in life. There's never a beginning or an ending. There's just the middle. Yeah. And we come and go in life. We come in the middle and we end in the middle. And we have people who've come before us and people who are coming after us. And if we remember the people coming before us and remember their wisdom and their guidance and trust in that, and then we also remember the people coming after us. So we take from this world and we treat this world in ways where we're thinking about the future people who are coming after us. And that's sustainability, and it's environmentalism. It's our ancestors just lived that because they understood the circle of life.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's one of the things that connects all of humanity. I mean, we will find those circles everywhere. They're probably in the oldest drawings that we find on the walls of caves and rocks, and they're represented because they were considered important. And even if you just visualize a circle right now, just visualize that shape and even put yourself in the middle of it, it's a reminder just in seeing that.
It kind of reminds me of, do you know, we're talking like generations before us, but like when somebody was sick, like for example, I'll talk about people from like the rainforest, like so. When someone's ill, the person would lean down in the middle, and everybody around them would just chant and heal together.
Yes. And even today, if you go to a hospital, I mean, when my husband's grandfather died, it was early in our marriage when he died, and we all just stood around him in a circle.
Oh, wow.
As he was dying. And he had his whole family around him, but we were around him in a circle. And I think that when you have enough people in a hospital room, it just naturally, I mean, we're around the bed in a circle. It's just a natural occurrence. You don't have 8 people all standing in a line.
Wow.
You have everyone surrounding the person, because we understand what it's like to surround someone. And whenever we're doing that, we're naturally forming a circle.
Wow. It's just amazing. Wow. Yeah. It's interesting that we know of these things, but we never really pay attention to what the meaning is behind it.
Right.
And
Right. We know we feel into things, and this is why I find it fascinating because when Donna Eden, who wrote the book Energy Medicine, when
mm,
she can see energy, and so when she began working with the energy and doing these movements and gestures and things to work with that energy, she would go back into the research and find out that there were cultures all over the world who were doing these same movements,
yeah.
and now you begin to wonder how were they sensing that energy? Because they
Mm,
were living with their bare feet on the ground, all of
yes.
our ancestors, and
Yeah.
had their bare feet on the ground, and they wore skins for clothing.
Oh, yeah.
And we know today that these skins had communication to the body.
Wow.
They reminded the body where it was in space, and now we wear a lot of synthetic and light fabrics that don't do that. And so
Mm,
there are a lot of people with immune issues who in one of the problems in immune issues is the body stops communicating properly, the immune system stops communicating properly, so we don't know the difference between self and other, and the
mm,
skins actually would remind the body, here's where you are, here's where you begin and end, and here's where the other person's energy begins and ends.
yeah.
And so you would know the difference easier between your energy and someone else's energy with those skins, because the skins were there to remind you. And so we just don't have that anymore, and we have a lot of energetically sensitive people running around with nothing to remind them about the difference between their energetic boundary and someone else's. And if
Yeah.
you take a person who's having immune issues, and every person with immune issues also has leaky gut, because once the immune
Mm,
system gets diffuse and stops communicating, the gut, they found in studies that every gut is leaky when the immune system isn't communicating it properly anymore. So we don't know the difference between self and other. The gut is now leaky, which means that as food is leaking through the gut that shouldn't be, it's creating an inflammation signal to the body. So now the body has to go deal with it, and it's on autoimmune, or possibly it's so busy dealing with it that the immune system isn't strong enough to deal with a virus or another pathogen. So that's where you get things like cancer. But then you get
mm,
a leaky brain, and this is where we get into brain fog,
wow.
because so much inflammation where the immune system is constantly on alert and dealing with it. The blood brain barrier starts to get leaky. So think about this: everything's getting leaky. The immune
Mm,
system is diffuse, and it's busy dealing with things it shouldn't have to deal with. So it's not tight and controlled and in communication the way it should be. And the gut is now leaky, and now the blood brain barrier is leaky, and inflammation's getting into the brain, and now we've got brain fog, depression, anxiety, Alzheimer's, dementia, as this continues on. If this keeps continuing on, then we move into Alzheimer's, dementia, and other
mm.
forms of memory loss.
Ex-
So think about leaky memory.
mm,
We've
yeah.
forgotten the things that can keep us connected. We've moved so far away from the things that keep us connected, starting with our connection with our ancestors,
Mm,
which is our DNA. That is our DNA. Our DNA is a blueprint from our mother and father, which they got from their mother and father, which they got from their
mm,
mother and father. So by the time it gets to us, we are some version of our ancestors at the DNA level.
yeah. It's like how we've like when we were young, we didn't have hardly any technology around us or like mobile phones and computers, and now we have all these devices that it kind of takes us away from ourselves
Yes.
and our ancestors. And I guess like it was interesting that you were saying about the skin, the clothing. I guess those were like the voices of our ancestors reminding us of who we are and where we're heading.
Well, we were everything we did was all of life. I mean, we clothed ourselves in nature,
Mm,
and we paid attention to the cycles of nature, and we watched for things. Imagine someone who can find their way. I mean, I can barely find my way in my car unless I have my GPS on, but
yeah.
they could find their way from one end of something to another and walk for miles and remember the bend of a branch or the way the
Mm,
landscape changed, and they could find their way from one end to the other, and they weren't just looking and using their eyes, or they're trying to remember. They were feeling things. And
mm.
so if you take people who are so connected that they could sense, they could hear a branch move and sense that it was a tiger, or
Wow.
they could feel the shift in the wind. They had been through enough they had been through enough things like a solar eclipse where everything goes silent. All of nature goes silent in a solar eclipse. And so they've been through those moments where the sounds of nature change. And when you're attuned to those things, you start to understand what it was that made that sound. Like I've been out in nature and camping or something like that, and I hear something that sounds like a huge animal is around, but it was just a squirrel breaking a branch, and it sounded really loud, and it's this tiny little thing. But the more you are in those situations, the more you learn what different sounds mean.
Yeah.
So our ancestors were simply using more of their senses and less of their logical brain, our frontal lobe, which is a small part of our brain. They were using a larger part of their brain because they were also using the intuitive parts of the brain. So we have a brain in our gut, we have brain tissue in the gut, we have brain tissue in the heart, and then we have all this intuitive brain tissue on our right brain in our head. And so we're not taught to tune into those parts. And so we don't always lose the fact that we sense those things. But now when we sense them and we dismiss them, they can become stress in the body because we're not honoring it. Yeah. So let's say you're saying, oh, I'm looking for a sign, and you get a sign, you get a signal. It was, for me, it was gut pain. And I would say, give me a sign, and I get gut pain, and I dismiss it. I would think that was just some old symptom coming back, because I didn't realize that in my wiring from a Chinese medicine perspective, where I experience intuition is often in my gut. That's other people might experience it through emotions or through other symptoms. And so, you miss the signals or you dismiss them. You've still got the stress of whatever that signal was. It's trying to communicate with you and you're dismissing it. Now, that's what the immune system is doing in the body. The immune system has got to communicate in order to keep us healthy. And when it loses its ability to communicate, that's where things start to go wrong. So I like to think about that as, what is the lesson there? There's so many things, there's so many signals that we're dismissing because we don't like the way the signal came to us. We don't like that it came to us as a symptom and it's pain. We don't like that it's an emotion that's anything less than positive. We don't like that it came in the form of some person who was rude. Whatever the signal is and however it came, it was a dream, and nobody's going to believe me when I tell them about my dream. Right? We don't like the signal, and so we dismiss it, but it's still there. And so now it creates stress. And the more stress we have, the more the nervous system gets hit, and the more the immune system then gets hit, and the more symptoms come up, and this is why symptoms get louder and louder and louder until we finally pay attention. So for me, with the gut symptom, there was a period of time when I dismissed it until the point where I couldn't walk because my gut was in so much pain. And finally I was like, okay, because I told my body, give me a signal, and I dismissed. I didn't believe or want to think that was the signal until I was on the ground and I had to say to my husband, go get the car because I can't walk. And he, this was, 10 or 12 years ago. And he went and got the car and I was like, I'm ready to listen.
Yeah, I totally relate with you, Heather. It's like with my kidney.
Yes.
I was pushing, not listening, collapsing, pushing. And it was like, right, I'm going to show you what you need to learn.
Right. And think of what the kidney is in Chinese medicine. It's your willpower.
Yeah.
They believe it's your where all your energy comes from. And I think that's, there's a lot of discussion of what is it, the kidney or is it the adrenals, which sit on top of the kidneys, the little organs on top of the kidneys. It's a little bit of both, but I think that the kidneys are sort of like when you say shine your inner light, the kidneys are like our inner light of energy and willpower. And it's how we get the will to move forward in our lives. And we often will try to get by on willpower. So we're recruiting our kidneys and our adrenals instead of resting.
Yes.
And the more we do that, the more we overdrive our energy and the more we tire ourselves out. And you can't shine your light if you're tired. You can only go at half of your level of energy or some small amount of your level of energy when you're tired. And so, you started to listen because you want to shine your light.
Yeah, that was my big lesson actually, was because you're right actually, I was pushing so much beyond that I could do, living off 3 hours sleep many, like probably about 4 years ago, um, and my body just was like, enough. learn
Hmm.
learn to flow and learn to be balanced, and trust the intuition, like we were talking about earlier. Trust that intuition, and what is it your body's saying? What does it need in that moment? And as I started to honor that, then everything kind of made sense and why things were happening. And yeah, wow. It's so powerful.
Yeah.
But I want to talk to you about your journey with sage, if that's possible,
Okay.
because I feel like we all kind of know about sage, but it has to fall into our laps, if you see what I mean, at the right timing. So, when did sage kind of come into your world?
Well, I've known about sage for a long time, just growing up, and I would have things like sweetgrass and sage around
Mm,
when I was growing up, but I had them and I kind of knew what they were, but I hadn't really spent time in the truth of the ceremony.
mm,
And so, many cultures use sage, and sage is also often used as a new age type thing, and people make up their own ceremonies and stuff like that.
oh,
So one of the things that I wanted to do was, I was sort of getting back into the deep and traditional aspects of my own culture, and I recommend that everyone go to their own cultural plants and sacred ceremonies. But
mm,
sage is a nice place to start. I mean, sage, in Native American culture, it's believed that sage drives away negative energy, and we have sweetgrass, which attracts positive energy, and then we have cedar, purify, and then we also have tobacco, which is an important plant. And this isn't
oh wow.
cigarette tobacco. This is the unprocessed, unrefined tobacco. Also cornmeal, and these things are often used to offer thanks in before ceremony and prayers and things like that, and even before sage ceremonies. So diving into the real reverent aspects of those cultural rituals and ceremonies was what was more important to me than the aspect of this disconnected, let me burn the sage and run through my house kind of thing, which is probably about the most I really did prior to diving deep. And what I love about the idea of sage is it's really working with energy. First of all, you have the plant and the meaning
Mm,
of that plant, and sage is also a very healing plant. You can make teas with it, and you can do a number of different things with sage to use the healing aspects of that plant. And some people have sage essential oil that they work with, and for people who don't like smoke, I will often, if I'm teaching a class where I'm
mm,
teaching people how to reconnect to their ancestors, I'll often do a sage ceremony. And if there are people in the room who can't handle the smoke for a variety of reasons, I also have a backup plan, which is a sage spray, an
mm,
essential oil spray. And so we can do the same thing with an essential oil spray that brings the energy of that healing plant to drive away the
mm,
negative energy. And so if you think about saging or smudging, it's something that we often do before and after big ceremonies because of that clarifying and purifying energy. And there's an idea of burning the sage, and you burn it just so that it's smoking. It doesn't have to be smoking like crazy. It's not going nuts or anything like that, but just a nice, you blow out the flame and you've got a nice smoking quality to the sage.
mm,
And you then go into a place where you take the smoke with your hands and you cup your hands, and you bring the smoke and you put it to your head face and smell the smoke, and again you're being engaged. You bring in the smoke and you put it to your heart, and then you go down to your legs. And if somebody's saging you, they'll go in a clockwise direction and sage the rest of it all the way down to your feet. And
mm,
you can be asking for things like clearing your mind, clearing your eyes of any burden so that you can see, clearing your mouth of any old thinking or any stuck places so that you can speak with your voice. And you can be thinking about the things that you're letting go of as you're cupping that smoke and bringing it around your body. And then we would say, facing the direction of the creator, the direction of the north, just saying nyawa or thank you. And you could do this every day. You could do this for special ceremonies that you want to do. but it really can set the stage to bring you into a place of where you're ready to sink into a meditation or to sink into a ceremony.
Yeah, I find that sage is so powerful. It's about 2 years ago when I kind of fell into it, and I saged the house, and wow. I felt like it's like the house almost becomes like refreshed, and like
yes,
any old emotions, because we don't realize that from the moment somebody has built the house to the painting the walls to the sofa that you get or anything in the house, that has energy, and that's stored energy. And a lot of us don't realize that sometimes even something on the bottom of our shoe that brings energy into the house, and that there's a reason for everything, and that with saging it allows you to almost like clear the old clutter and just release whatever's in your space and just bring a fresh approach, I guess is probably the right word.
Exactly. 10 years ago, before I had really gotten deep into saging, I was saging a little, and there was one period of time when my husband and I were selling our house, and we were buying a new house, and the people who were selling this house that we were buying were very difficult to work with. And part of what was making them difficult to work with is they had this house on the market for a while, and a family of 4 children grew up and lived their entire lives in that house. And so and their mother died in that house, and they were having a very difficult time emotionally, even though they knew they had to sell the house, and they all had plans to move. The father, who was still living there, had plans to move on. And so at the last week, when we had gotten through all these hurdles to purchase the house, and we were supposed to be moving in within a couple of days, we had packed our current house up, and everything was packed, and everything was in the moving truck, and everything was gone. And we were told by them that they wanted 1 extra week to go do a ceremony in the house. Now, this house had been for sale for a year and a half. So I'm sitting there with nothing in my house, no bed, no nothing, saying, "You've got to be kidding me." They've had a year and a half to do a ceremony, and they're doing it and asking for an extra week, and we've all signed papers to agree that it was going to be, the next day. And so we're sitting there in our car getting ready to leave our empty house when we get this news. And we're sitting there thinking, another week, what are we going to do? Now we have to get a hotel. We don't have all of our stuff, the whole thing. So I'm angry at this point. Now I'm angry. It's like we've gotten to this point. I'm totally stressed out. So I got some sage, and I went back into our current home, and I put on some music. My cousin Joanne Shenandoah is a Grammy Award-winning Native American singer, and her music is really beautiful. And I've loved it all my life. And so I put on her CD, and I lit the sage, and a song came on, and I didn't know the name of the song, and I didn't understand the words because she was singing it in our native language. And I walked through the house saging our current house, and I began to feel this tremendous forgiveness, and I began to feel this tremendous relief of what had been pent up anger over all of the roadblocks that I felt this family was putting in front of us. And I wanted to know what was that song, because as the song was playing, it was as if something was communicating through me.
Wow.
And I went and I looked, and it was called Hiawatha Forgives, which is about Hiawatha. And it's all about when Hiawatha's children had been murdered by one of the warring tribes, and how Hiawatha learned to transmute all of this into deep forgiveness and became a big part of this peace process to bring all of the 6 nations together in the Haudenosaunee Confederacy.
Wow.
And I didn't know any of that. I didn't know that's what was being sung. Wow. I didn't know any of that. And so it was called Hiawatha Forgives. And I thought, that was the first inkling that I had that our language, our native language, can be healing. That my DNA still understood something about the vibration of that sound of the language, and that my body shifted, and I felt this healing and this forgiveness when I heard those words, even though my brain didn't understand them, something in my body did. And as I went back and started to look at scientific studies, because I always love, I mean, not that science has to prove everything, but I love to find out if someone else has been curious enough to study. And they have done studies, and there has been a lot of discussion about
Wow.
how, in terms of epigenetics, that 95% of things outside of our genes that help us heal, that science is trying to understand after they did the Human Genome Project and realized that our genes are only responsible for 5% of our health, and that there's this stuff outside and above and around our genes that really determine our health. Things like, what we think, what we believe, what's in our environment, the food that we're eating, those things, the stress that we live with in our lifestyle, the relationships that we have in our lives, those things make up much more of our health than science ever realized until they did this project with scientists from around the world. And so this is why, all of the studies that have been done, why does ritual work? Why does ceremony work? Why does prayer work? Why does meditation work? And they're telling us why in the studies, that when they do these studies, they're finding that they work. And this is the mystical side of things. It's the unseen. We don't know exactly why they work, but we know from the studies that they do. And so those are the studies that don't get done as often, and they don't get advertised as much because there's no money in them.
I guess it's because people see it as woo-woo, and it's something society's slowly coming towards, but it's only because of the rise of the internet what we're questioning things more than ever.
Yes. And the more I laugh so hard when a new study comes out that proves that, sharing our stories, actually, if we share our story of trauma, it helps us to heal. The healing goes up by 35%.
Oh my God.
When I see these studies, like Harvard did an 80-year study where they found out that the biggest contributor to health, happiness, and longevity is your community and your relationships.
Oh my God.
Points of connection. So, they've been following hundreds of people for 80 years. So they've been able to track people. And I find it fascinating whenever these studies come out, because those of us who've studied ancient medicines like Ayurvedic medicine, Chinese medicine, Native American medicine, we laugh and laugh because our ancestors knew this already.
Yeah.
It's just that it was dismissed because somebody in a lab with double-blind, controlled, blah, blah, hadn't already come out and proven that this unseen thing that we could feel actually worked. So when you go out into nature and you feel better, we have tons of studies to prove that it works. Yeah. Tons of studies. But we don't trust our feeling. Right? What the heck is that? Why do we dismiss how we feel? When you're around someone that you don't trust and you don't feel right, and you just keep saying, yeah, but they're my boss, or yeah, but they're famous, or yeah, but they're whatever it is that they are, that you're convincing yourself that you still have to be friends with them. And then 2 years later, all the evidence comes to the table that this person's actually been betraying you, that they've been, they've embezzled, whatever it is. And you already knew in the beginning.
Oh gosh, you're making me laugh as well. It's so true. And it's amazing. Like, even if we don't even listen to those signs, the universe will take that person out of your life some way or another.
Yes.
For you to learn.
Yes. And if we feel victimized by it, and we create a story that we've been a victim, instead of saying life just gave me the opportunity in a very harsh way, because I knew and I didn't listen. And look, no blame. I find myself questioning why I didn't listen many times, because we don't grow up learning how to trust our feelings. And it's until we deeply surrender to these signals and say right away, I just met this person and they have a great resume and they're really nice and they're being so nice to me. And so I'm just going to dismiss the feeling that I have because everything appears to be fine, and it's until we have enough evidence and we pay attention enough that we realize that it's time to step back and surrender to the signal and stop looking at the surface of the seen world. We have to trust the unseen. We have to find ways to trust the way we feel and to honor ourselves. And honestly, I think that we're blocking our ability to love ourselves if we're not trusting those signals, because we're basically saying, you don't matter, you don't matter, you don't matter, you don't matter all day long. Like as little kids, when we have these ideas and we think they're brilliant, and our parents tell us they're silly,
Yeah.
or no, you can't do it, and we're being told we don't matter, and then we spend our lives thinking, I have to go back and undo all those messages my parents, my teachers, the leaders of the world told me where I couldn't do things.
Gosh, yes.
Well, we're telling ourselves all day long. You don't matter. You don't matter. That doesn't matter. Look, this person's smarter than I am, so I should be listening to them. They wrote a book. They are PhD. They're an MD. Whatever it is that those people are telling us. And that's one of the things I love about the Native American medicine wheel, because it reminds us that all those lessons, the locus of control is not outside of ourselves. The locus of control is in within ourselves. We have control in Native American culture, and the circle of life, which is a medicine wheel, is like a circle, puts us in that center and reminds us that all those teachers, all the religious people, all the psychologists and the doctors who we thought had control of our mental, physical, spiritual, and emotional lives, it's all fine, but the true locus of control is within. Yeah. And somehow we have to reconcile honoring that first. Yeah. So that not that we dismiss everything that people around us say, but that we check in and make sure that it aligns with our own value system. Yeah. And to some degree, if you are on the path of listening to your intuition and telling yourself that your intuition matters, you're reminding yourself, I matter, I matter, I matter all day long. How I feel about this matters. I know my priest, my doctor, my psychologist, my husband, my whatever said this, but I matter too. And the feeling that you have when they're telling you something and you're getting the feeling this isn't my truth. Yeah. The minute that you say no to yourself and yes to the other person, you're saying that the locus of control is outside of yourself.
Yeah. And I guess going back to what we were saying at the beginning, it's our ancestors are helping us to trust our divine light and always trust in it no matter what. And I love the way that you just explained all that, because it was like, even with my story, my dear, when we spoke about it on your show, I got told by the doctors that I had depression. I could have taken those tablets, but I chose not to, because something inside of me said, that is not what you need. You've gone through so much. You don't need it. You just need to trust from within. And I went out in nature and I connected and I listened to the voices from within, and I trusted my path. And I think so, like, it's so important that we trust ourselves, because only we know us better than anyone else.
Exactly.
And I feel like a lot of us forget about that. And I think that's one of the key things, is that nobody can be you and nobody can do things like you, because you are you for a reason. And if something doesn't feel right, don't do it.
Yes, exactly. Because the cool thing is that, we all came in with a unique blueprint. So how our DNA is set up, how we are set up at the DNA level is different from every other person. And our intuition is what reminds us of what we're here to do. It's your intuition is how you tap into the intuitive brain in your heart and the intuitive brain in your gut that knows what you came in to do. And we're so busy spending time with the small part of our brain, the frontal lobe, that tells us how to fit into society. And we're so busy letting that lead that we're constantly trying to fit ourselves into society instead of following what we came here to do and honoring that. And so that's why that's a huge piece of health in Native American medicine, looking at dreams and looking at unfulfilled desires of the soul as part of our way to our path to healing. Is that if we have these things that we dream of and wish that we could be doing, or if I had all the money in the world, this is what I would be doing, kind of stuff. It's usually your intuition that's crying out to do those things, but it's your frontal lobe that stops you. and so it's that's all part of the healing process. Yeah.
Wow. My dear, we are coming towards the end of the show. Wow. I've just been blown away with this conversation today. Can you tell us a bit about the meditations for loving yourself to great health?
Yeah, so those are meditations that Louise Hay, Alia Cadro, and I wrote while we were writing the book, Loving Yourself to Great Health. and they're in the book, and then we also did them as a CD, because a lot of times what I would find with my clients is that if I wrote a meditation for them, they wanted to hear it so that they could close their eyes. It's kind of hard sometimes to remember everything that was written in a meditation. So we did that as a way to give people access to those meditations so that they could experience them without having to read them or memorize them. And they are really designed to help connect us to the earth. So they're all points of reconnection, connecting us to our body, listening to the signals of our body, connecting us back to the earth, feeling the healing vibration of the earth, because we do know that the earth actually has a frequency and vibration that is designed for healing, as opposed to the electricity vibration and the radiation vibration that we have from all the electronics in our house, which is actually a stressor for the body. So putting your feet on the earth, or even visualizing lying on the earth, can be very healing for the body. So we have one in there for that. We have meditations that are designed to help you digest, absorb, and eliminate. We also have a sort of, how do you just, when you're overwhelmed by life and overwhelmed by everything, Louise Hay would always say, whenever you don't know what to do, just focus on love. So we have a meditation to just focus on love as a first place to start. And that's almost like doing a sage ceremony, because love is a very healing energy. And when you breathe that into your body and you feel that energy, it's a great way to purify the body and purify the mind and get you into a space where you feel ready or calm enough to take whatever that next small step is. So they were really designed to just help people with the mind, body, spirit aspect of healing. There's a lot in Loving Yourself to Great Health that's about changing your diet, listening to your body, and choosing the foods that are right for you. And then the recipes that we created, those are recipes that I've written over decades of when I was healing my gut. And so I have hundreds of recipes and files that are all based on things that as I felt them in my body, as I researched, I would choose ingredients that were designed for balance and designed to heal the gut. So the ingredients are not necessarily easy to find on a regular grocery store shelf, because most ingredients on a regular grocery store shelf are ones that are not great for gut and brain health. So there are ingredients and spices, and all the things that are in those recipes are designed to help heal the gut, brain, body. And but oftentimes when people are overwhelmed or experiencing a health challenge, there's not the energy to get into your kitchen and learn how to make a new recipe. So the meditations were designed as another way to get the body strong and ground and build this energy so that you could feel ready to sort of step into your kitchen and make one recipe that might help you feel better and give you even more energy.
I love that. And Maddy, can you tell us about the Well Project?
Yeah, it started out, the Well Project, right before I went to Rekindling the Fire of Our Sisterhood, which is the women's healing event that I did with my cousin. I started dreaming I started hearing words and sentences in my dreams. I had mostly dreamt in pictures.
Oh.
And movies. Like I would have movies and I would be in the movie, and that's how I would dream. And I wasn't a person who dreamed about phrases and words. But just the night before, we were meeting on a sacred site called Ganondigan in upstate New York. And it was a very sacred site for our people. And the night before we had our first day together, I kept dreaming, all people who come to this land will heal. And those words were just going through my head all night. I did dream, I did see people in a big circle in that field, and I hadn't been to the field, so I didn't really even know what the field was going to look like. But I had this dream, and it was what the field looked like. But I kept hearing those words, all people who come to these lands will heal. Wow. And that's what's been happening. The amount of healing that's been happening through this community of women has been amazing. And so little by little, I found myself waking up with words. I would share whenever I would wake up with a dream, or especially with the words, because it was as if something was being whispered in my ear. And And I heard it so specifically that I would wake up and I'd write it down. And so about 2 to 3 weeks after Louise Hay passed, I was watching her Doors Opening documentary, which is when she started working with people with AIDS. And this culminated in a lot of things coming together for me as I was watching it, because, when you have somebody who's your dear friend, you often forget that they were this amazing healing teacher and life-changing person in the world, because she was my dear friend. So I was always in awe of her. But to go back and watch her in action in this work that she was doing, I was yet again in awe of her. There was always these moments that I would remember that, this friend of mine was actually this incredible teacher. And so I'm watching the work that she's doing and the looks on the people's faces, and it began reminding me of this work that I had started doing with Dr. Judy Mikovits, who's a molecular biologist and immunologist, PhD. And I had been meeting with her and her colleague, Dr. Frank Rossetti. Between the two of them, they have over 400 peer-reviewed science articles. And so they're pretty major heavyweights in the area of immunology. And they actually, in the 80s, while Louise was doing Doors Opening, were working with Dr. Candace Pert, who wrote Molecules of Emotion, who an incredible woman scientist and a real leader. They were working with her on something called peptide T, which was helping people heal from AIDS. So here are these people that were all doing work in the same field, but in different ways. Louise was teaching people that it was okay to love themselves and to start loving themselves so that they could heal. And also, even if they didn't heal, we might as well go out loving ourselves, So she was teaching them that it was okay to love themselves and that it was important to love themselves. And they hadn't heard messages like that before. And that was epigenetic, even though she didn't know it at the time. And even though we didn't have the Human Genome Project at that time, she was actually working at the epigenetic level with people. And as I would travel with her, men would come up to her and hold her hand and say, I'm alive today because of you. And she was one of the people that started to shift the way people felt about the potential for healing and for healing in a way that, when you love yourself, it can be the beginning of all healing. And meanwhile, Dr. Judy Mikovits and Dr. Frank Rossetti were working with helping people heal with peptide T, which is a type of amino acid chain that would block the inappropriate amino acid chain that was AIDS, that was HIV. So they were working on healing at the immunological level. And I began working with Judy and Frank in this situation where we would meet people in restaurants and talk to them about their health, and nobody was exchanging money. This was all happening for free. Like a lot of Louise's work started that way as well. And we would often hand products to our clients across the table that was free or wholesale. We would try to get it at the lowest price possible. And I was watching the looks on people's faces. So I had been doing this work already, and then I'm watching Doors Opening and I'm seeing the looks on people's faces as they're talking about Louise's work, and I'm thinking, what we're missing is community. And we're missing this family, this feeling of, if we all had each other's backs and it wasn't about exchanging money and it wasn't about anything other than we're here for you and we can help you and we can share knowledge, wisdom, and information with one another, but while creating a family feeling and a community feeling, that we could actually engage those aspects of healing. And I believe that's what Louise was doing when she was teaching, because she was engaging the epigenetic healing qualities of community and our thoughts and our beliefs. Wow. And bringing people together in these regular meetings that they were having, which started with 2 people in her living room and grew and grew and grew to thousands of people in an auditorium every week. Wow. And so all of this was coming together, but I woke up in the middle of the night with the words "well." And it was just, I saw the letters. I saw them in capital letters, WELL. And I was seeing, I am well, you are well, we are well, all is well. And I was seeing wellness and well-being. And I was seeing these words. And I thought, okay, I went to bed, and then it happened again the next night. And then it happened again the next night. And I woke up on the third day saying, I've got to do something about this, because I've always wanted to do something like this, where a community came together to support people in healing. Because these days we have too many disorders and diseases that are confounding allopathic medicine. They don't know what to do with autoimmune disease. They don't know what to do with connective tissue disorders. They don't know what to do with Lyme disease. They don't always. The allopathic way of dealing with cancer is to kill everything, including almost you, and try to bring you back to life again. With chemotherapy. So I'm not knocking allopathic medicine, because they're doing the best they know how to do. But if we look at the epigenetics of this, there's so many other things that we could be doing using food, our thoughts, and community to share wisdom and information. And one of the things that I love about Dr. Judy and Dr. Frank is that they have open minds about medicine. So they're in science, we know that everybody's an experiment of one and everybody's different. But a lot of allopathic medicine tries to treat us as if we're the same person. And that's where I think things go wrong. We're not the same person. We're all unique. And Native American medicine, there's a revival of, we have to honor the story of each person when we're collecting data. We can't deny the story of the individual, because that's part of the data. And so this is what I was doing with Frank and Judy. We were practicing in this way, and we would go to oncology appointments with people, and I would see the looks in their faces. And as the weeks went by, they would tell us that they didn't lose their hair if they were doing radiation or chemotherapy, and they looked really healthy, and people couldn't believe that they were sick. And they were telling us that what really made the difference for them was this feeling like somebody had their back and feeling like they had a family. So I went to, I was trying to think, how do I do this? How can I get this program off the ground? How can I get some funding? So I went to the Price Pottinger Nutrition Foundation, which is a 66-year-old foundation that started with 18 doctors and nutritionists and scientists who all believed back in the 1930s, 40s, 50s, all believed that nutrition had something to do with medicine, and they were all considered heretics in their time, because this was when allopathic medicine was getting really strong. And so they all had scientific studies and research to show the power of nutrition. And these 18 doctors, nutritionists, scientists left their legacy to the Price Pottinger Nutrition Foundation. They've been around for 66 years. Wow. And they've been, their goal has always been to help people heal and thrive through education about nutrition, environmental health, and lifestyle, natural ways of healing, science-based natural ways of healing. And I went to them and I asked them, they knew Louise, they loved her work. They had, oftentimes written articles. They had articles in their journals about our work and things like that. And so I went and said, I have this vision that I would like to create a program that is on a sliding scale. I mean, we need to find ways to fund the program, but it's on a sliding scale, so people pay what they can pay. And that includes coming for free if they can't pay anything. And they said, yes, we'll do this. We'll fund this. So they created a seed funding for this program. And we are meeting right now on a monthly basis. We may begin meeting more often than that, where we're gathering together in person in the San Diego, California area, and online for people around the world to come and learn about all of these ways that we can help our bodies heal. So if someone's has an autoimmune condition, or they have a condition that's confounding science, or if, like me, they've been told that they have an incurable, untreatable illness, which is what I was told, go home. There's nothing we can do for you. You may end up in bed at some point without being able to do anything. And all these other scary, potential future things that could be happening. And, most of my life has been spent finding the ways to heal myself with lifestyle, nutrition, and supplements. And I've done a very incredible job at turning off symptoms that could have been debilitating throughout my life as I, you bring all of these pieces together. And so I know there are others out there who want to be a part of this community who also have things that have worked for them. So this isn't just us teaching people. It's also all of us as a community sharing the medicines that have helped us, the herbs, the foods, the meditation, all of the remedies that have helped us heal. we're going to share that information. And I'm bringing experts like Dr. Judy Mikovits, Dr. Frank Rossetti, and other professionals to the table. I'll be teaching some of the classes. I have many other PhDs and nutritionists and scientists who are going to come and teach. And again, it's at a sliding scale. So people come with whatever they can come with to come to this class. And we want to leave no one behind in the healing process. Wow. There's a much bigger vision to this. We're calling it now the Wellness Project, because that's what everybody was calling it anyway. So we changed the name to the Wellness Project. And if anyone wants to learn more about it, you can go to Price, Price-Pottenger, POTTENGER.org, or you can come to my Facebook page, Heather Dane Medicine Woman. If you just put Heather Dane Medicine Woman into Facebook to search, you'll find my professional Facebook page, where I have a banner that you'll see about this project, the Wellness Project, and you can click Learn More, the little Learn More button right underneath the banner, and that will take you to our page, which will tell you all about this program and how you can get involved. We also have a Facebook page, so if you look for the Wellness Project by Price Pottenger, you'll see our Facebook page, and you can come join there. And we do Facebook Lives and things like that. And there, we just did our first one a couple of nights ago. And it's really just to make sure that we're answering questions between sessions and keeping people together between sessions. And so I want to invite everyone or your friends or family who are looking for solutions, and you really want to either add some natural solutions to your allopathic journey, or you want to focus on complementary medicine, the epigenetic aspects of healing, and you want a like-minded community to support you in that process. Come join us, and let all of your friends know about it, because we want to grow this community and we want to support as many people as can be supported.
I just want to say firstly, I love you and I honor you for sharing this, because it's so powerful. And what you're doing, Heather, it's just going to change so many lives. So thank you for creating this vision alive, because I can just feel it already. There's going to be so many lives changed across the world with this.
Well, thank you. And I love you too, Gerds, and you're doing this with all of your work as well. So we're all spreading a beam of light wherever we can, and bringing our ancestors and reminding our DNA of the importance of community and the importance of sort of reconnecting, I think, is all part of that healing process. So I honor you for continuing to share these kinds of messages.
Oh, bless you. Well, thank you, Heather, for being on the show, and thank you for sharing everything today. Wow, I feel like this has been the most powerful interview we've done so far.
we just keep getting better every time we talk.
Yeah. Wow, yeah. It's. I have no words today. I don't know what to say. Thank you so much, because I know this is going to change so many lives, and just hearing this interview and people joining the Wellness Project, do check it out, because it's going to blow your mind, and you're going to learn things that you never knew were within you, that actually are there, but you'll be able to see it in such a simplified way, which will make sense.
Thank you so much, and I look forward to our next opportunity to connect. You're always amazing to spend time with, Gerds. Oh,
bless you. I love speaking to you all the time. Oh. Wow, what an amazing interview with Heather. I love having her on the show, because some of the things that she talks about is just so powerful, and it's so interesting to know that we can shape and heal our own health. Unfortunately, that's the end of the show. Before I leave, I want to leave you with this quote. We all grow up with the weight of the history on us. Our ancestors dwell in the attics of our brains, as they do in the spiralling chains of knowledge hidden in every cell of our bodies. That's a quote by Shirley Abbott. For more information about the show, or for more details about Heather Dane, visit www.gerdshundle.com. And remember, stay happy, stay healthy, stay lit.